the satirical writings of the great Enlightenment philosopher Voltaire, a book entitled Candide explores the greatest perils of life. Towards the end of the fiction, the characters recognize the need to cultivate their gardens. Granted, this is a philosophy book, and nothing in one can ever be taken completely literal. And this idea of cultivating your garden can be applied to a multitude of practices, like cultivating the relationships we have in our life, cultivating our minds, and cultivating our spheres of influence. My name is Lora Taylor, and it is essential to me that I never forget the necessity to cultivate my variety of gardens. So here's a little bit about me. I'm a straightforward person with a passion for getting tasks done. I'm hard-headed and have a conviction to help people while loving them. My faith in Jesus Christ is essential to me, and as Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, whatever activity in which you engage, do to the best of your ability. By being committed and focused, I know that I can achieve the goals that I have planned for my future. One of these goals is attending my dream college in New York City, called the King's College, while attending classes on Wall Street. After that, I just desire to help people in the best way I know how. My other areas of interest lay majorly in music. I play French horn in the school band, and then at home I play piano, ukulele, and guitar, just dabble. I hope to continue those practices after high school. And also I enjoy reading the hard books, such as Candide, as I mentioned before, just to understand the world more meaningfully. I love how everyone is so different in this planet that we live on, and I'm constantly looking for ways to get to know them better. This year, I am studying leadership consultation in ISM, and leadership consultation is essentially going into workplaces and helping companies run more efficiently and effectively. In ISM, I am desiring to learn more about leadership and how to pinpoint problems and fix them. Consulting's been an interest to me since I was a little kid because everyone's dad is their superhero, and my dad's a consultant, so I grew up hearing stories about him and the things he would help people accomplish in work. In addition to this, I went through a series of band leadership trainings, and that's how I became interested in the leadership aspect. While I didn't necessarily receive much guidance from the trainings, it was a great experience to learn that it was an aspect that could be applied to the business place. And lastly, the levels of disengagement in the workplace are through the roof, and that makes me very sad. And like as a consultant, you have the opportunity to cultivate enjoyment in the workplace and the people you work with. So that's interests me a lot. And so since this job showcases both people skills and public speaking, I was incredibly interested. Which leads me to my quote by Niccolo Machiavelli. It says, "There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things." I chose this quote because I desire not to be simply in the world, both of business and as life, but I also plan on doing things to change it for the better, which will be a difficult task, but that's because nothing easy is worthwhile. Over the beginning of the year in ISM, it was necessary to conduct a series of informational interviews. My first interview was with Mr. Clint Grider. He works with a company called Oxano, and they consult for churches. I came into contact with Mr. Grider he's actually consulting for our church right now, and my parents got his business card when they were at one of the meetings. And by talking to Mr. Grider, he was an incredibly personable and just great guy. And it was super interesting to find out how it's possible to consult for churches and show return on investment in the church, which is usually manifest in the number of people who begin attending, who are saved, etc. After that, I interviewed Mr. Tom Ziegler. I freaked out about this interview. I'm like not gonna lie. I grew up hearing about the Zig Ziglar. Like, some people heard about sports guys. I heard about Zig Ziglar. So when I was presented with the opportunity to interview with the CEO of that company, I was just overjoyed. So my interview with him was probably one of my favorites, and he introduced me to the idea of different personality types and how personality types and personality, like generational differences, can affect the workplace. the conversation we had reminded me of the ones that I've had with my dad before. He was very straightforward and willing to share with me, so I greatly enjoyed the opportunity to learn from him and his extensive knowledge of leadership. After that, I interviewed with Miss Tanya Bradford. She works at Towers Watson, which is a consulting firm down in Dallas and Houston. And we talked about, one of the main things that I asked her about was what it is like to be a woman in the business place. Because you see all those old time films and it's the big fat guy with a cigar and he's like, the women don't have any ability to do well in the business place. And thankfully, she told me that this is not the case, that the women are treated as equal and are just as successful as the men. And so that was just wonderful to hear. It made me a little more confident about stepping into the workplace post-college. My last interview was with Miss Carlene Chapman. She also works at Towers Watson. I got her contact from Miss Bradford. And we talked again about personality types and how important it is to realize how they can affect a consulting experience. Which brings me to my first interview, who I chose to be my mentor. This is Mr. Mike Rodriguez. He is the CEO of Mike Rodriguez International, which is a accredited business firm consulting firms, that does amazing things. And my relationship with Mr. Rodriguez, this mentor to mentee, him being under the title of entrepreneur, leadership trainer, motivational speaker, consultant, and dad and friend, and so many more, he most specifically fit what I was hoping to find for my study. Our personalities work so well together, and I've loved how much I've learned this year already and look forward to how much more I will learn. Throughout the process of finding a mentor, it was important to conduct first-hand research, which I began with my job outlook assessment. And through the general field of consultant has a 19% increase for the future of the career, which is great news because that means that when I graduate college, there will be more jobs available then than there are now. After figuring this out, the next thing I researched was the relationship between the project manager and the consultant. I learned that when working well together, a project manager and a business analyst can increase the success level of a project significantly. And when you figured out that you need to just keep to doing your own job and not try to mess with anyone else's, then you can begin to focus on more than the inner workings of a company, which would be on macro. So this raised the issue of finding work. Essentially, a consultant is a salesman for their work, but it's important to get an edge on your competitors, which introduced me to the idea of becoming a thought leader. A thought leader is someone who is knowledgeable and innovative, and consulting groups can receive up to a 2,000% return on investment if they begin to apply the practices of being thought leaders. So to become thought leaders, the executives of consulting firms need to be published and write how-to articles and seminars to show how intelligent and well-informed they actually are. This improves the ability of a consulting firm to be effective because it builds the credibility and trust with their clients. And so when I entered the workplace after having this initial knowledge, I hope to as well become a thought leader at some point in time. After this, I looked into the philosophy of Mr. Zig Ziglar, and the article I analyzed spoke about the 8 things people need to be happy. Among these are being healthy and prosperous, and these ideas were fascinating to me in the approach of how you could inspire them in people. It's not possible to make someone happy, as mindset is a personal decision, but situation often determines mindset. So when you have control over a situation, you ultimately have control over a mindset. It sounded like a challenge that I look forward to doing more research on. I also had the opportunity to attend a variety of college classes where I did some hands-on research. In a class dedicated to business ethics and responsibility, I learned about corporate governance and stockholder rights. From a general business standpoint, it was interesting to hear the number of people that are involved in a company outside of the employees and clients. I also learned a lot about malpractice and how CEOs sometimes aren't as awesome as they're made out to be. After that, I attended a leadership class where we talked about servant leadership and in what aspects they were effective. Among these, they could be applied to both a big business standpoint, such as Chick-fil-A, who has a core fundamental belief of servant leadership to just small entrepreneurial firms. That is what they practice. And this trip to UNT taught me a lot about what I am looking for in my own personal college experience. And that probably won't be UNT, but it's still a great school. And I'm looking forward to doing more searching in that aspect as well. My last area of research was focused mainly on personality types. And this stemmed, of course, from many of the informational interviews I had, in addition to the initial meetings that I had with my mentor. And since so much of what we initially talked about, me and Mr. Rodriguez, was personality types, I decided to look more into it. The personality descriptor of choice that Mr. Rodriguez used is the DISC chart. And that encompasses the dominant, influencer, steady, and compliant or calculative type, which can be seen up here. You have the dominant, which these are some of the main almost indicators of them, and then influential, steady, and compliant. So what I learned about each of these types, I had an assignment where I had to identify different personality types in public, and then by identifying them, I had to make an assessment for Mr. Rodriguez about how you could better relate and work with that person because of what you knew about the personality types. All the information that I learned have researched this year and under my relationship and mentoring with Mr. Rodriguez has benefited me immensely. I've learned so much about the business field. I've learned about personality types and how they work together, and I've learned that I really don't know anything at all, which is a great place to be because the world's my canvas. There's so many different aspects of business in relationship to consulting and not that I desire to do more research on through this year and into next. One area that's sparked a particular interest in me has been nonprofit business, which I may begin a study on next year. So the majority of what I've learned this year stemmed from my mentor visits with Mr. Rodriguez. In all honesty, without any offense to all of your guys' mentors, Mr. Rodriguez is hands down the best mentor that I ever could have hoped for or gotten. He's taught me so much about consultation, and everything he's taught me about business, he's taught me tenfold about life in general. My public speaking skills and my relationships with my friends and family are in a better place than ever before. The second semester, we're going to go more in depth about workplace interactions between consultants and just regular business people, which I'm looking forward to immensely. And everything that I learned at the beginning of the year, the things about personality skills, basic leadership tactics, and communication will continue to be reoccurring things that we learned about second semester. My weekly learning sessions at Dunkin' Donuts are something that I look forward to immensely every single week because I know that when I walk away from a mentor visit, I'm going to be a better and more intelligent person than I was before. My mentor visits ultimately helped inspire the first major project that I did this year, which would be my original work. In the beginning, I was trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do, and I knew that I wanted to focus on personality types because so much of what I learned this year and have been interested in was personality types. So then I had to decide which personality chart I wanted to use, because there are many. There's the DISC chart, there's the Myers-Briggs, and among others. So after reviewing through a lot of them, I did settle on the DISC chart, which is what Mr. Rodriguez uses, and then I struggled to figure out how I was going to take this information that I was going to analyze and research and turn it into the Omnis original work, because it could have gone a million different directions. So I decided to work on my skills of creating infographics, because computer web design has always interested me, even though I'm not great at it. And I began the process of researching, combining data, and putting together information for all 4 types of personalities on the DISC chart. So here's what that looks like. Here is the infographic I made for the dominant type. It encases the percentile of people who take the DISC chart tests. About 10 to 15% of them actually are the dominant type. And then went forward to key indicators, which would be dominant types. I am heavily one, are results-oriented, confident, straightforward, confrontational, competitive, and they take initiative. But then the downsides would be that they come across as bossy, impatient, insensitive, and can lack people skills. Following this up, I decided to include the best questions to ask, which would be, why does this need to get done so quickly? Because sometimes dominant types can be borderline impatient. And then how can I help us achieve the end result desired? Also, I include a little factoid part about ways you can encourage them and the work between you two to be more effective. The second one was the influencer type, which would be 25 to 30% of people are the influencer type most heavily, and they are the energetic, social, collaborative, impulsive, and enthusiastic type, but that leads to them not necessarily being quick in getting tasks done. So then the questions to ask them would be, how can I help you get this done on time, and can you tell me the deadline on this, to encourage them to accomplish what they need to accomplish. And then some of the things to watch out for them is to use gentle persuasion, such as the last question, to sort of push them in the right direction when it comes to work. After that was the steady type, which 30 to 35% of people fall under this category. And they're the inclusive, consistent, indecisive, and non-confrontational parts. They're your average workers. They just want to get stuff done and stay out of the way. So you need to bring them out of their shell sometimes, as they can be meek. So it's good to ask what their opinion is, how much time they need, and if they're comfortable. It's good not to rush them into decisions, because they can be curl up back into their shell when they don't know what they're doing. Lastly was the calculative type, which is 20 to 25% of people. And the calculative people are systematic, detailed, organized, orderly, accurate, and contemplative, And so some of the downsides of this is they almost seem to have need an excess of information at all times. They're overly analytic, can be calculative, and they aren't great at delegating tasks, which is when it becomes important to ask them if they have all the information they need, and if they have any more questions, and how much time they will need. They'll ask questions to feel more comfortable. They're not trying to be annoying. And it's important to provide the means for them to delegate. Again, back to the gentle persuasion idea, can I help you on this? Is there anything that I can have to help? Which then brought me to, I finished up all the first part and decided that my project felt incomplete. I wanted to go more in depth and explore these personality types and how they interact together more deeply. So I put together my research and higher level thinking skills to figure out the tendencies of each specific personality types and how they would interact together, which brought me to personality types in action, which was my analysis of the DISC chart. This brings to combining each personality types with how they interact with all the others, such as the dominant with the influencer, and what the D needs to compromise with to make that work more effective, and same with the dominant and steady and dominant and calculative. And I made a similar chart for all 4 personality types, and then I decided to compare them to themselves. So when 2 dominant people are working together, it's like constant clashing heads because they believe that they have the best idea for everything. So making this easily accessible form to show the interaction between each type and how people can make adjustments to work better together, I was so happy about how this turned out, because I didn't really have a complete idea of what it would look like, and I'm so excited that this is something I can use every day, and so can Mr. Rodriguez. And when you print out all the pages and the PowerPoint part, it forms a little booklet that's like personality types on the go if you ever need it. So the next big step for my project this year through my ISM journey is to figure out my final product. And we're still on the drawing boards right now. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to look like completely, but most of my ideas are leaning towards having a control group take the DISC personality chart, and then once I figured out what each of their types are respectively, to then put them all through a leadership training, which incorporates the leadership aspect of my study, and then follow up to see how 2 people I pair individually, so I could pair a dominant and an influencer together, and see if the things that I assumed in my original work actually come true in action of problem solving. This is a way to see if what I figured out in my original work is actually true, and just learn more about public speaking and the way people communicate. So if anyone's interested in doing that, that'd be great. I'll probably need people. All right. So Ronald Reagan once said, "There are no great limits to growth because there are no limits to human intelligence, imagination, and wonder. This year, I'm excited to push my boundaries as a person and a young professional. By loving God and loving people, I'm ready to set out on my mission and achieve amazing goals. Thank you for your time.